Hi everyone, I'm Zan from Felon Fair, and today's video is going to be on choosing the right material for your medieval or fantasy costume. So I hope you find this helpful. If you do, please like, comment, subscribe to our channel for more videos that will be very helpful when it comes to designing your medieval or fantasy costume. So without further ado, there's a whole litany of different materials that you can use to create costumes. But I wanted to go ahead and give you a general overview of several that I really like, and hopefully this will kind of give you a framework, an idea of what you have to work with, and hopefully you'll find it inspiring. So when it comes to choosing a material, one of the first primary things you have to do is figure out what was available to the culture that you're trying to represent. So if you're doing Vikings or Romans or Revolutionary War period stuff, you've got to figure out what materials did people have access to. So would that be wool, linen, cotton, for example? Cotton's a New World type material, so you wouldn't see cotton popping up until that later time period. So things to think about. So as we're going to go through these, I'm going to try to give you some pluses and minuses for each one, and then I'll give you some examples of where you can find some of the items or some of the materials from each one of these different materials. So what I want to start out with, because a lot of you are only going to watch this video for the first 3 minutes, but I want you to get this part. My absolute #1 favorite material for making medieval and fantasy costumes is 100% rough woven heavyweight linen. Now, the reason I love linen is why in our Felon Fair shop we make probably 90% of our things out of linen is a couple things. First of all, it's a material that people had access to in medieval times. It's a material that, especially if it has a thick weave, looks very rough and very rustic. It also weathers very nicely, and as you wash it, kind of the highlights kind of come out, and it makes it look a little more worn and weathered very quickly. And it's just very comfortable. It's very breathable, and it can be very soft. So those are all huge pluses when it comes to linen. One of my favorite places to buy linen is fabric-store.com. They have some awesome colors there, and it's just a great way to get some awesome linen. So I highly recommend, #1, linen. #2 would be wool. Now, the pluses of linen was it was lightweight and it was comfortable. Wool is heavyweight and often can be itchy. So it's usually better for overgarments like coats and cloaks and that sort of stuff. The cool thing about wool as well is a lot of times you get cool patterning like houndstooth and herringbone, some of which had some historical precedence. So, for example, right here is the material we make one of our linen Viking, or our wool Viking cloaks out of. This is a herringbone type wool pattern, but it's this really nice big bold pattern. It's really heavyweight, it's very warm. Wool is also pretty water repellent, so it's a great option when it comes to wearing something that you're going to say wear out in the rain and such. Another thing is wool obviously was available during most of the medieval period and was probably the prime material that was used for outerwear. So that makes it another great contender when it comes to choosing garments. Now, this is whether you're looking to just purchase the fabric and make it yourself, or if you're trying to find a company that you're trying to buy your medieval costume, buy your clothing, find a company that makes stuff in the materials that you're looking for. So once again, wool is a great option. Now your next option, and this is kind of your more budget option, is cotton. Now people use cotton because it's very cheap and it's very accessible these days. The downside with cotton is a lot of times it's very tight weave and very lightweight and looks very machined, very modern, just because of its nature. So just think about that when you're buying, when you're trying to create something. Now there are ways to get around that. A lot of times weathering helps, kind of chewing it up a little bit with like a wire brush and putting some dark material or dark weathering substances like paint and stuff on it. So this is a gambeson that I made. It is a cotton material, but after a lot of weathering and that sort of stuff, you kind of can't tell anymore. So that helps. There's also some companies that use a real nice heavyweight kind of either uncombed cotton or just a heavier canvas This is one of the gambesons from Epic Armory. They use really great cotton. You see the lining, but nobody ever sees that. That's a finer cotton, but this is a nice heavyweight cotton that looks more like a linen on the outside. So they do a great job with these gambesons, and the material choice was really excellent for that. The company Bergschneider makes all their stuff out of cotton, out of uncombed cotton, which looks far better than just your normal cotton sort of outfit or sort of clothing. So that's another good option if you kind of have to watch the budget a little more. But once again, in my opinion, still doesn't look as good as linen, and definitely isn't going to look as good as linen after like 5 or 10 washes when that linen is just really just worn down and just looks awesome. So, but anyway, but it is a good option, especially if you're on a budget. Now, some other options when it comes to garments and stuff is leather. So, we've done a lot of work with leather. Now, there's some downsides to leather. For example, it's really expensive. This is a leather ranger vest that we made. So this is all goat skin. Just the leather alone on this thing cost over $120 just for the materials, not counting labor and that sort of stuff. So leather can be very expensive. So that's something to think about as well. Is that something? Is it really worth it? Is the trade-off for, say, making this out of cotton or out of linen or wool even? Is it going to be worth it to get that leather? If it is, then awesome. Good on you. You're going to have an awesome looking outfit. Now, if you're on a little more of a budget, then pleather or fake leather is a good option as well. So this is a similar Ranger vest that we made. I made ages and ages ago. And so this is pleather. This is real leather, but this is pleather. You can tell this looks pretty good. Now, the downside is on the back side, you can tell that it's a upholstery fabric. So, but this is far less expensive. It's also a little easier to work with, honestly, than leather. Leather can be kind of a pain when it comes to sewing and that sort of stuff. So there are some advantages to pleather. Also, if you're a vegan and you're against using animals as clothing and such, then that's another good option for you as well. Now, there's some other ways you can use leather, especially in a more heavyweight type setting, and that's using it as armor. So you can obviously make things like this leather armor. This is a great option. It looks really rusted and rugged. This is not a historical pattern. It's something we came up with, something we invented, based kind of roughly on the lamellar, but it's kind of a scaled plate design, but it's kind of medium to lightweight leather, and it turns out pretty good, and it looks rustic and used. So that's a great option as well. Now, you can also a lot of times kind of trick people with materials by using materials for other than their intended purpose. So the mask, for example, on this helmet is actually made out of leather. So we made this mask out of leather, then painted it to look like metal. So that kind of gives you some unique options when it comes to maybe you can't afford a blacksmith to put a mask on your helmet, but you can use something else. Some more tools that are kind of coming on the market more and more are things like Warbler and foam. Those have their advantages, especially if you're in cosplay and that sort of stuff. They're lightweight. They can look like a lot of different things. They can be painted to look like a lot of different materials. The downside is they're usually not as strong. So if you're looking for something that's going to take a sword blow at a LARP event or something like that, or if you're looking for something that's going to be even stronger and more durable over the long term, then you may need to find something tougher like metal or leather. Now, the last one that I'm going to address is metal. Now, most of you are not going to be running around blacksmithing, that sort of stuff. So you're going to be either buying gear that has buckles and stuff on it already, or you're going to be buying your steel stuff, and that's okay. That's great. Those of us that sell that stuff appreciate your service in helping us, eat. So, but make sure that whatever you're getting, it has good-looking metal pieces, not cheap ones that are going to fall apart, and not ones that are obviously moderned and machined. So, and a change that Epic Armory made really recently that I really love is they started putting these historical brass buckles on all of their stuff. So that gambeson I showed you, this helmet, which that's a huge step up. They're the only ones that I know that are doing that in the industry, at least at their price point right now. And that's a great option. So, look for something that's a little more subdued, a little more toned down. You don't want something that looks like chrome or stainless steel on a medieval outfit because they just wouldn't have had access to that. There's some other things you can do. Now, this helmet, obviously, we've taken steel and we've painted it. So that's another great option if you have to disguise maybe stainless steel or something like that. And then there's some other things you can do with different patinas and just even a wire brush and some wax material, that sort of stuff, to kind of darken up and roughen up any sort of metal or stuff that was shiny. But just think about that as well. Anything that you're choosing that's metal, especially belt buckles and that sort of stuff, is usually where I see it. Try to find a metal or a material that's going to look rustic, and that's going to look like the whatever society that you're portraying would have had access to the resources, the technology to make that. So if you're a Viking, try not to have a super shiny, modern-looking belt buckle. And then the last thing, when it comes to all of this stuff, no matter what, you can have the best material at all. But if it looks like it's made to a modern standard, whether that's, it's got very modern-looking buckles or a modern-looking belt buckle, or whether it's the cut or the way it's sewn and put together, if it looks super modern, that's just going to be a little less believable than one that's put together with this kind of historical mindset. Where I see a lot of this is especially in Renaissance period stuff and some of the fantasy stuff, where especially a lot of the women's garments especially, but in others as well, where it just looks like they just basically took a modern dress and called it a medieval dress or something like that. So just keep that in mind, that not only do you have to choose a good material, but also make sure that the design and the cut is well within whatever the technology or the design aesthetic that whatever culture or group you're trying to portray would have had access to. Well, folks, I hope that's helpful when it comes to when you're trying to design your medieval outfits. If you like this video, please do like, please do comment, and please do subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram at @FelonFair, and you can see the costumes and stuff that we post all the time. Also follow, there's a great save feature on Instagram, so as you're trying to design stuff and you're inspired by stuff, you can go, whether it's our pictures or anybody else's pictures, you can save them to different folders. I have all sorts of folders on my Instagram when it comes to helmet inspiration and all that sort of stuff. So definitely do go on Instagram and find yourself a good kind of start creating a like folder of things that you really appreciate and that you find out well, and that will help you when it comes to purchasing an outfit. If you have a good reference, if you have good inspiration with you right there, that's a huge benefit, as opposed to just going in blind or just going and buying whatever random product you happen to see at the moment. Anyway, thanks a lot, folks. We really hope this was helpful, and keep checking back for more videos.